You're watching updates at noon on TV2 with me, Renee Fong. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said the spirit of Ma'al Hijrah and the valuable lessons from the Hijrah event have provided strength to Malaysians in facing the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic and efforts to revive the country's economy. The Prime Minister shared the words of encouragement in a post on his official Facebook page. The Premier wrote this year's celebration may not be the same as previous years, but the spirit and lessons still give the people strength, especially in facing the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, which is not over yet, and efforts to revive the country's economy. Tan Sri Muhyiddin said this year's Ma'al Hijrah celebration theme, namely Ummah Rabani Negara Harmoni, emphasized the development of the country in line with the concept of prosperous country under the protection of Allah. This approach, he added, emphasizes the intention to seek the blessings of Allah as the main goal in maintaining the country as a developed, peaceful and harmonious country. The Premier also congratulated Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah and Sheikh Al-Azhar Al-Sharif, Sheikh Professor Dr. Ahmad Tayyib, who were named this year's Tokoh Ma'al Hijrah. Adapting to the new norms among the people is one of the positive changes in the country's efforts to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ma'al Hijrah 2020/1442 recipient Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah described compliance with the standard operating procedure SOP set by the government, such as physical distancing, wearing face masks and frequent hand washing is the best method in changing people's lives for the better. According to the Health Director General, the SOP used now had actually been practiced during the time of leading Islamic medical figure Ibn Sina. For example, by tightening border control, avoiding large gatherings and not shaking hands during a pandemic. He believed that if the people complied with the SOP, the country would be able to cut off the infection chain of COVID-19, even though no vaccine has been found at the moment, just as the country did when faced with the spread of SARS and MERS-CoV.
Sebagai seorang pakar bedah, saya mungkin boleh menyelamatkan satu nyawa pada satu masa. Tetapi dalam pentadbiran, iaitu kesihatan awam, kalau perancangan kita betul, kita boleh menyelamatkan satu negara. Jadi inilah tanggungjawab yang kita galas bersama di Kementerian Kesihatan, bekerja sebagai satu pasukan dan juga bekerjasama dengan kementerian-kementerian lain. Dan kita menggunakan whole government and whole society approach. Dan saya menyuruh kepada rakyat Malaysia untuk sama-sama membantu negara kita.
Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham said this after receiving the award of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah at the national level Ma'al Hijrah celebration at the National Mosque last night. At this year's celebration themed Ummah Rabani Negara Harmoni, Al-Sultan Abdullah also presented the International Ma'al Hijrah Icon Award to Sheikh Al-Azhar Al-Sharif, Sheikh Professor Dr. Ahmad Tayyib. He was unable to attend the ceremony and was presented by the Egyptian ambassador to Malaysia, Gamal Abdul Rahim Muhammad Medwali. All religious activities in mosques and suraus in COVID-19 risk areas in Kedah have been suspended with immediate effect. State Islamic Religious Affairs Department JEAIK Director Muhammad Yusri Mat Daud said the mosques and suraus involved were from 7 districts, namely Kota Star, Kuala Muda, Kulim, Baling, Yan, Kubang Pasu and Padang Terap. The mosques involved are in the districts of Kota Star, Kuala Muda, Kulim, Baling, Yan, Kubang Pasu and Padang Terap, as well as several suraus from the affected areas. The suraus were ordered to be shut down in a release statement. Muhammad Yusri, however, said obligatory congregational prayers in the mosques involved are allowed with the maximum number of 3 people involving the imam, mosque officer or committee member by complying with the stipulated standard operating procedure. He added that any mosque or surau whose congregation members are found to be positive for COVID-19 should be disinfected as a whole, and the operation of the mosque should be completely closed and reopened 14 days after disinfectant process. Kulim Municipal Council MPKK has limited the business operating hours in several sub-districts effective Tuesday due to the spread of COVID-19. All business premises are only be allowed to operate between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. daily. Kedah Menteri Besar Muhammad Sanusi Matnor said the decision was made in line with the jurisdiction of the state government and local authorities.
Tindakan-tindakan di bawah Akta 342 atau pencegahan dan pengawalan penyakit berjangkit terletak di bawah bidang kuasa Kerajaan Persekutuan. Kerajaan negeri tidak boleh mengambil apa-apa tindakan yang tidak diperuntukkan kuasa itu kepada kerajaan negeri, melainkan kuasa untuk bertindak di bawah PBT.
He said this after chairing the State Executive Council meeting at Alostar. According to the notice uploaded on the PBT Facebook page, exceptions are given to petrol stations, private clinics, wholesale markets and factories that have received operational approval from the International Trade and Industry Ministry. Heavier penalties, a maximum fine of 1 million ringgit and imprisonment of up to 15 years are being proposed for poaching. Department of Wildlife and National Parks Peninsula Malaysia Perhilitan Director General Dato' Abdul Kadir Abu Hashim said the proposal to increase the sentence from a maximum fine of 500,000 ringgit and imprisonment for 5 years now would involve amendments to the Wildlife Conservation Act 2010, Act 716. Dato' Abdul Kadir said the amendments to the Act will be tabled to Parliament at the end of this year. He said illegal hunting cases over the past 10 years involved locals as middlemen, while poachers were mostly outsiders from Vietnam, Thailand and Cambodia, who usually went into the forest for 90 days to set traps.
Kebanyakannya adalah orang Malaysia lah, yang akan susun atau masuk daripada sepadan. Contohlah kan, bila sampai ke Malaysia, dia hantar sana, hantar sini, hantar ke Taman Negara, hantar ke selatan. Itu. Ada. Kebanyakan kes kita tengok semenjak daripada 10 tahun yang lepas tu, kebanyakan orang tengah semua orang Malaysia.
Dato' Abdul Kadir said a total of 12 operations related to poaching were conducted this year until last August. There were a total of 43 investigation papers open for various criminal offences involving 86 offenders with a confiscation value of 1.37 million ringgit. Up next, 512.5 million ringgit channeled to Health Ministry to combat COVID-19. A total of 512.5 million ringgit has been channeled to the Health Ministry MOH as at 7th August to further enhance the ministry's efforts in combating COVID-19. While a total of 1 billion ringgit has been extended to finance the purchase of medical equipment such as ventilators and intensive care unit ICU equipment, personal protective equipment PPE for public and medical service personnel and laboratory equipment for COVID-19 screening. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz said for the frontline special allowance, 222.4 million ringgit has been channeled based on 694,447 claims. This comprising of doctors, nurses and other medical personnel who are directly involved in the management and containment of the pandemic. The minister said this when presenting the 17th Laksana report on the implementation of the Prihatin Rakyat Economic Stimulus Package Prihatin and National Economy Recovery Plan Penjana. He added that this special allowance was also extended to members of the military, police, customs, immigration, fire brigade, civil defence force and RELA who were directly involved in implementing the Movement Control Order MCO. The e-Tanah system, a digital integrated application developed to carry out electronic land administration matters, will be extended nationwide in the near future. Energy and Natural Resources Minister Datuk Dr. Shamsul Anwar Nasara said the effort to digitalize land administration using the system would provide convenience to the people when carrying out land-related dealings. The minister said the system would be expanded after the success seen at the office of the Kuala Lumpur Federal Territory Director of Lands and Mines, which has been using the e-Tanah system since 2017.
Ia satu yang amat baik sekali, di mana apabila kita membuat kajian di wilayah persekutuan, kita mendapati hasil yang diperoleh oleh pejabat tanah wilayah persekutuan meningkat berganda melalui ini, dan ia bukan hanya meningkatkan hasil, tapi yang lebih penting ia memudahkan urusan rakyat berkaitan dengan urusan tanah.
The system is expected to be launched this year. Datuk Dr. Shamsul Anwar was met after launching the Underground Utility Detection Equipment Calibration Centre at the National Institute of Land and Survey Institute in Tanjung Malim. The federal government, through the Education Ministry MOE, has allocated a sum of 726 million ringgit this year to repair 87 dilapidated schools nationwide. Works Minister Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof said 142.5 million ringgit of the total allocation was for 22 schools in the peninsula, while the remaining 583.5 million ringgit was for 65 schools in Sabah.
Sekolah-sekolah ini adalah untuk projek tahun 2019. Tahun 2019 ini keseluruhannya kalau kita lihat di Malaysia, sejumlah 62 buah sekolah keseluruhannya di Malaysia yang menggunakan peruntukan pembangunan sebanyak 43 buah sekolah dengan belanja 128 juta ringgit. Manakala di Sabah ada program khusus dinamakan program di bawah PFI sebanyak 19 buah sekolah dengan belanja 78 juta ringgit.
The minister said the projects in Sabah are expected to take between 8 and 12 months to complete, adding the schools would be built using the conventional method instead of the industrialized building system IBS. Earlier, Datuk Sri Fadilah handed over letter of acceptance SST to contractors for upgrading projects of 17 dilapidated schools in Sabah at the Sabah International Convention Centre. The Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs, KPDNHEP and Plus Malaysia Berhad will collaborate to promote local products as well as medium micro businesses at selected rest and service R&R areas. Its Minister Dato' Alexander Nanta Linggi said this would be implemented through the Optional Stopover Zone Program ZPP soon. Citing its implementation in major supermarkets nationwide as an example, the minister said that for now, the Buy Malaysian Products campaign has received good support and cooperation from consumers and supermarkets. He said that KPDNHEP would look at the need to create new policies for improvements to drive the retail sector at R&R areas, which are described as focal points for visitors.
Sekadar just stop R&R di tepi highway, tapi boleh diangkat sebagai tahap yang tepat untuk membeli belah macam mall dan sebagainya.
He said this after visiting the Sungai Buloh R&R Overhead Bridge restaurant, which is also a ZPP. The rating of these R&Rs through the ZPP will be based on the smart enforcement approach aimed at creating a conducive business environment for traders and consumers. The minister said this would ensure consumer comfort in terms of the goods having price tags, legal and accurate weighing scales, affordable food prices, cleanliness, security in public facilities when they stop at the R&Rs. Alliance Bank Malaysia Berhad is expected to record a loan growth of between 2 and 3% for the financial year, ending 31st March 2021 from 2.2% in financial year 2020. Group Chief Executive Officer Joel Conreich said given the COVID-19 pandemic, the bank would have to be more restrictive in which loans it underwrites. The bank is also anticipating to roughly produce 50% of the loan volume that it had produced in previous years.
Last year we had almost 8% growth in our SME loans, and we had almost 3% growth in our consumer loans. This year we expect the SME growth to moderate somewhat. Our consumer loans growth will probably be around the same level. And the reason is that last year, obviously, as people deleveraged in the share margin financing, that had a large impact to slow down the consumer loans growth. So we think that the share margin financing portfolio will be more stable, but we also think that the increase in the portfolio in mortgage and in personal loans will be lower than in FY21. So in aggregate, we'll end up around the same place, between 2 and 3%.
He said this at an online press conference after its annual general meeting yesterday. He said the bank would still likely show comfortable profit for financial year 2021, given the overnight policy rate OPR cuts and credit pressures that would arise from the pandemic. On the moratorium, which would expire at the end of September, he said about 15% of its SME clients would benefit from loan modifications. In international aviation news, Australian flag carrier Qantas on Thursday posted an almost $2 billion annual loss after a near total collapse in demand due to the coronavirus pandemic. Strict restrictions on travel to Australia and a near blanket ban on citizens leaving spelled a statutory pre-tax loss of 2.7 billion Australian dollars, which is $1.9 billion, including the cost of mothballing its Airbus A380s and huge redundancy payouts. Revenues, meanwhile, collapsed 82% between April and June, facing the most challenging period in its 99-year history. Qantas said it would move ahead with retrenching 6,000 staff and has grounded 100 planes for up to a year in a $10 billion cost-cutting blitz. The airline reported a strong first half of the year, followed by a near-total collapse in travel demand as virus restrictions were introduced. CEO Alan Joyce said the airline was on track for another profit above $1 billion Australian dollars, $718 million US, when the crisis struck. The global aviation industry is facing perhaps its biggest crisis to date, with numerous big-name carriers seeking billions of dollars to stop them from going under, while others have gone out of business. Joyce said the industry's recovery will take time and it will be choppy. Foreign segment, Cuba to start clinical trials of potential coronavirus vaccine. Cuba kicks off clinical trials next week of a potential coronavirus vaccine called Sovereign 01, developed by its state-run Finlay Institute with results due in February. Its state-run media on Wednesday said the potential coronavirus vaccine will be delivered in 2 injections during the trials that will involve 676 people aged between 19 and 80 years and conclude on 11th January. The communist-run island prides itself on its biopharmaceutical industry begun by former revolutionary leader Fidel Castro, which is also an important hard currency earner and already produces several vaccines. Kirill Dmitriev, head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, told Cuban state news agency Prensa Latina that Cuba could even be one of the places it could choose to produce the vaccine from November onwards. Authorities said their treatments for the new coronavirus have already already helped it reduce mortality in sufferers. The country of 11 million inhabitants has registered just a handful of deaths in the last few months, bringing the total to 88 deaths for 3,482 confirmed cases since the start of its outbreak in March. Cuba has handled its outbreak in textbook fashion through contact tracing and isolation of potential asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19. Although cases have risen in recent weeks since it eased lockdown restrictions in the capital, prompting it to tighten them once more. Militants have taken hundreds of hostages in a northeast Nigerian town where people had just returned after fleeing their homes. Locals and militia sources on Wednesday said Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP terrorists late Tuesday overran Kukawa in the Lake Chad region. Local militia head Babakura Lolo said the militants seized those who had returned to the town in a government operation on 2nd August after spending nearly 2 years in displacement camps. The terrorists attacked the town in 22 trucks and engaged soldiers guarding the town in a fierce battle. Kukawa's residents had returned to their homes just 16 days earlier under military escort on the orders of the Borno state authorities. They had been living in camps in the regional capital, Maiduguri, 180 kilometers, which is 120 miles away, where they fled following a bloody attack in November 2018. The decade-long conflict in northeastern Nigeria has forced around 2 million people from their homes, mostly in the northern part of Borno. Many have moved into squalid displacement camps in Maiduguri and rely on handouts from international charities. In the last 2 years, local authorities have been encouraging the displaced to return home, despite concern by international charities that this is not safe. Hundreds of Palestinians on Wednesday held a protest in the occupied West Bank against last week's announcement that Israel was normalizing ties with the United Arab Emirates. Members of rival groups Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, and the Fatah faction of President Mahmoud Abbas' West Bank-based Palestinian Authority, took part in the rally in the rare joint initiative. The bombshell announcement last week that Israel and the energy-rich UAE would normalize ties sparked fury among Palestinians, with both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority leadership denouncing the U.S. brokered agreement. Under the deal, Israel said it would suspend its plans to annex Jewish settlements and other territory in the West Bank. Those annexation plans were outlined in the controversial Middle East peace proposal unveiled in January by U.S. President Donald Trump, which some Palestinians have sardonically dubbed the deal of the century. Around 2,000 Palestinians took part in the rally at Turmusaya, a village in the north of the West Bank, nestled between the cities of Ramallah and Nablus. The protesters threw stones at Israeli forces who responded with tear gas. Early on Wednesday, hundreds of Palestinians held a protest in the Gaza Strip to denounce the UAE-Israel deal. Coming up in sports, Narby double sends dominant Bayern into Champions League final. Bayern Munich powered into the Champions League final, where they will face Paris Saint-Germain, as 2 goals from Serge Gnabry led them to an empathetic 3-0 win over Olympique Lyonnais on Wednesday. Bayern will bid for their 6th European Cup triumph when they come up against Neymar and Kylian Mbappe on Sunday, and after convincingly beating Chelsea, Barcelona and now Lyon. Hansi Flick's side will surely start as favourites. Bayern grabbed the lead as a clever ball from Joshua Kimmich found Narby, who danced in from the right and unleashed an unstoppable shot from over 20 meters out into the top corner. Narby went close again with a snapshot that Lyon keeper Anthony Lopes did well to keep out as Bayern pushed hard for a second. It came in the 33rd minute and was started and finished by Narby. Bayern lacked the intensity of their first half display, but they made sure of the win in the 88th minute when Robert Lewandowski rose to head home a Kimmich cross from a free kick. The Germans are unbeaten in 2020, winning 24 of their last 25 matches in all competitions, and they have won every Champions League game this season. No team has ever won the Champions League with a 100% record, but PSG's powerful attack should make for an entertaining contest. Awaiting Bayern Munich in the final, Paris Saint-Germain, after their emphatic win against RB Leipzig 3-0 in their semi-final on Tuesday, to book a place in Sunday's showpiece event. For the last 3 seasons, PSG had crashed out in the last 16. For 4 consecutive campaigns before that, they lost in the quarterfinals. PSG are finally progressing under Thomas Tuchel, but wins over Atalanta and RB Leipzig still leave questions. Despite reaching a sizable milestone in making the Champions League final, the manner of PSG's progress in Europe carries with it a number of caveats. Mental frailty has long been a problem for PSG in big Champions League ties. There was a lack of leadership in their carrying collapse at Barcelona in 2017. Nerves and individual mistakes, as well as an extremely unfortunate penalty decision, instigated the stunning defeat to Manchester United last year. However, wins over Atalanta and RB Leipzig show that Tuchel has made some progress in this regard. A meeting with Bayern Munich might provide answers about where PSG truly are as a team, but in light of the mauling Barcelona suffered against Bayern, that option may also provide PSG with the ultimate reality check. Ronald Koeman said he will fight to put Barcelona back on top after he was officially appointed Wednesday as the Spanish club's new coach on a 2-year deal. It's a happy day, according to Koeman, adding that it's a challenge and will demand the best of him. Koeman at his unveiling at the Camp Nou becomes the 5th Dutchman to coach Barcelona after Rinus Michels, Johan Cruyff, Louis van Gaal and Frank Rijkaard, the 57-year-old, who had been in charge of the Netherlands since 2018, replaces Quique Setien, who was sacked after the Catalans were humiliated 8-2 by Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals on Friday. In his 6 seasons as a Barca player, Koeman made 264 official appearances, scoring 88 goals as he shone in Cruyff's dream team, winning 4 consecutive La Liga titles between 1991 and 94. He also struck the winner in the 1992 European Cup final, the Catalan club's first ever success in Europe's top club competition. Koeman said he would stick to his preferred Dutch style of possession-based football, but rode back on suggestions in the likes of Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba could all be leaving the club. That's it from us this afternoon. In our top story, mosque surau activities in 7 Kedah districts suspended. News at 10 comes on this evening on My Freeview's Berita RTM News channel. I'm Renee Fong. Salam Ma'al Hijrah. Thanks for watching. Have a pleasant afternoon.